the subject is when, and one of the things you had said brought forth is God will usually tell prophets what, and he almost never tells you when. And I think you may have said, if he tells you when, he's probably not going to tell you what is going to happen on that thing. Case in point is God has told us Trump was going to be back as an example, and everybody tried desperately to hear when these things would be. It's like that scripture that says the prophets long to figure this one out, to look into these things, but God almost never tells you when. Okay, so this one is an exception to the rule, and where God gave prophets both a when and a what. And I mentioned just before it came on the air that my spiritual father was Wade Taylor. We prayed together every day for 5 years. For 5 years on the phone, we prayed. He was praying for my health and everything, but then he would teach me along the way. Well, one day he told me more than once that in 2012, which was the year he eventually went home. Before that, he said God said God said this year, 2012, was the beginning of the kingdom age. And I thought, what? I've never seen that anywhere. And what's he mean, the beginning? Because I thought there's these things about the rapture. And okay, so I just tucked that away. Then he went home. But before he did that, he told me that Arthur Burt, the older man who was in his 80s, said the same thing. 2012 was when there would be there would be no ebbing in the spirit beginning that year, and that was going to be the year of the church, the kingdom age. We're leaving the church age behind and coming in towards the kingdom age. Okay, so that was 2. Then I met Kat Kerr, and she said God had just met with her in 2012 and told her in 2012, the kingdom age, she was to go in the middle of the country, put her staff down, and declare that the kingdom age had arrived. And I'm going, oh, are you kidding? That's 3. That's both the date and the event, the kingdom age. And then I told you that, and you said what? Go ahead and tell your part.
Well, it's Rosh Hashanah of 2012. There's that's pretty significant encounter. It started with a dream, and I woke up, and I'm telling Elizabeth, I was like, I just woke up from a dream, and in it, I heard and understood that the kingdom age is just now. This Rosh Hashanah, we have begun, whether it started then, we are now in kingdom age time. And so, and then right when we're talking, got a call right then from a prophet friend of mine who said, John, I just need to tell you a dream. I was, and part of even what I was sharing with Elizabeth is how what I was shown in my dream and what the Lord was speaking to me early morning was how we had really received something even from John Wimber, and there was this whole connection with George Fox. And I won't go into all, for the time's sake, go into all that. But I was telling her all that. And so this prophet said, oh, and by the way, at this table, all of a sudden, John Wimber turned to me in my dream and he said, tell Johnny the kingdom age did just begin.
Whoa, so that's 5.
Yeah. And that was, but back to what you're just saying, when we have the when, the what, and the where. So we had 5 confirmations of the kingdom age. And we'll say for 2012. And the point I think I made a couple of years ago, and is the clearer you are on one, and specifically the what and the where, the clearer the what, the less clear the where, and the clearer the where, the less clear the what. Or another way to look at it, the more sure the time is, the less sure the what will be. And the more sure the what is, the less sure the time. Yeah. But there is a when, a what, and a where. And so even the part that's still for discussion is, okay, what is the kingdom age? So we got
what do these things mean now? What will be the sign, right?
What's the shift? What's the change? So there's always going to be a component that still has to be processed, thought out, waded through. But back to, for instance, there is nothing that was promised and more clear from the Old Testament that there would be a Messiah that would show up. If we want to call it the return of Jesus or the first time of Jesus, but it was like, so the what was the clearest thing spoken of over and over. There was not, you couldn't be a Jew, you couldn't be a member of Israel. They didn't have memberships, but like everybody knew the Messiah was coming. Like every child has this clearly taught to them in the instruction, so expectation, but at no time was there any kind of clarity on when. And so it created situations for hundreds of false, if not thousands of false messiahs to show up. It's just a reality of the situation. And so we apply it to where we're at now. I believe the strongest thing the Lord's saying is Trump is my Cyrus. He's been saying that. And I have him in place. And again, for me, is the world will be known as before Trump and after Trump. Yes. And this is me blowing the Trump. This is something I'm doing. And then what's less clear is exactly what his Cyrus's role is. Okay, is it the Biden seat? Is he going to be in there? Even now, as different prophetic voices and people try to, it's when you try to put what the Lord has shown you and put it into everyday situations, it can get messy and fuzzy because he doesn't think and process things in that kind of way. And so it's like, yeah, he is the key person causing this thing to happen. He is the catalyst for the new world.
Are you connecting that even intentionally with the kingdom age? God then at the time of the kingdom age speaks to Trump. 3 years later, he announces he's running. Are you kind of making a connection there?
Well, I think there is a connection. There, whatever it was started. It was interesting because we were given, we'll say, this false narrative that was going all over the place, that the Mayan prophecies ended in December 2012. And I'll just tell you, there was a bunch of prophets and prophetic names and books coming out, why it was the end and why it was all going to be done with in 2012. So we heard that echoed and re-echoed from everywhere, from a lot of circles, to the point where people would tell me, I don't hear anybody else that's considered a prophet saying what you're saying, that we're not ending in 2012. I said, no, we're just starting. It's the beginning. That was the whole point. Part of the point was it's the beginning of something. And in the beginning of something, it ends something, but it was not the end of the world. There was definitely wrong transcribing of Revelation taking place, that those who thought they got revelation, that the end was taking place. So as part of opening up this new, and there's a way, if you look back at even the tweets and things that President Trump was putting in his 2012 social media, that seems to be more relevant, his casting doubts and offering $1 million for anyone that could show him where President Obama was actually from and born. That stuff will still come to roost in the future.
Was he doing that in 2012?
Yes.
Trump was doing that? Oh, interesting.
In 2012, he was like, there needs to be, for those caught in human trafficking, there needs to be a quick sentence execution. I forget exactly the wording. And so this figure is coming out, again, he was a well-known figure, but his voice is coming out with some strong, those were very controversial. Oh my goodness, like just radical execution. And then you're saying he's not even a citizen. And all of a sudden now we look like, wow, that was, and so, he wasn't president, he was just himself, but the Lord was already blowing a trump, if we want to say that. So it's just a reality of the whole prophetic realm and world, that people are like, hey, I wish we could go back to, why can't we have prophets like in the Old Testament where they just say it and it's just like they said? And I was like, oh, well, who was that? Well, I think we've covered this before, because that didn't happen that way. There's a reason Jeremiah, they kept wanting to kill him and put him in a dungeon, and he's in prison for years because he was accused of prophesying the same thing for 40 years. And so they kept accusing him of being a false prophet, and he was not a false prophet. Then you had Isaiah, had no chance of his prophecy being fulfilled, because 140 years before Cyrus ever showed up, he's prophesying Isaiah 45 about Cyrus and what he will do. So there is no chance of that prophetic word happening in his lifetime. So this supposed storyline we have, that the prophets of the Old Testament were ones that got it real clear and didn't have any, and everybody knew it. So the leaders knew and the people of God knew. No, you can go after prophet after prophet after prophet, and what they said and how long it took. We brought you, Samuel, one of the highest level. It said the Lord allowed no word to fall from the mouth of Samuel. Every word he said was attended to by God, and he anoints David. The Lord has rejected Saul. You're the king. Well, it's decades before he's there. And then in between that, there's Ishbosheth that comes in, and then another one that comes in briefly. So he's not even the next.
Yeah, they even had two kings at one point, right? Is that what you're saying there? They were someone else, and David ruled.
And then David only had Hebron. David only had Hebron for 7 years. So it's like this idea that the prophetic just makes everything.
Yeah, in hindsight or whatever, you'd say, well, the prophets got it. So, and there's a misnomer that people say, well, they got it right, or they were stoned. No, they didn't. They were stoned for following God. That's why they were stoned. They weren't stoned for missing it. If they missed it, the God said, don't be afraid of them. But okay.